All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are diving headfirst into, let's face it, kind of a legendary book, but also a book with a bit of a, shall we say, a dark side, right?
A touch, a touch.
Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. I mean, you've heard the term, right?
All
Machiavellian.
right.
It brings up images of like scheming and just a ruthless ambition.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's there for a reason,
Mm.
there's just definitely more to it, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is going to be like a strategic extraction, right? So we're not here to debate whether the prince is like moral or not, but we're here to pull out its core ideas about power, control, and really just survival when things get competitive, you know? And
Right.
and the idea is to find those principles in the book, which have survived, you know? They're still around.
Yeah.
And try to apply them in today's world to stuff you actually encounter every day, you know, from your career to just, you know, dealing with people,
Right.
getting to that strategic essence quickly.
So let's jump right in. Machiavelli says it's better to be feared than loved.
Okay.
That's a pretty in your face, potentially uncomfortable statement.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that? What's he getting at?
So his reasoning, though, it's stark, comes from how he saw people acting, right?
Right.
So he said that love is a bond, but it's a fragile bond, you know?
Okay.
It can break easily, especially if someone sees an advantage for themselves. But fear, like if it's backed up by the possibility of consequences, that's much more reliable as a form of control.
Really?
And he actually said, you know, he said that the obligation of love, it disappears when self-interest shows up, right?
Right.
But fear stays because you're always worried about punishment. It never really lets up, that worry.
Oh, that is dark. I mean, but you look around, you can kind of see that happening,
Oh,
right?
totally.
Like leaders who give off this aura of just like, don't mess with me
Yeah.
kind of power, you know?
Yeah.
Someone like Putin. I mean, he's definitely cultivated that image, hasn't he?
Oh, for sure. Like Putin's whole leadership style, it's all about projecting power in a calculated way, right?
Yeah.
Both inside Russia and on the world stage. His actions, they often show this zero tolerance approach, right, to anyone who opposes him. And it's hard to ignore that fear as a tool he uses to keep control.
And it's not even just, global politics.
Right.
Let's think about business, right?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs,
Yep.
Apple, he wasn't really known for being, warm and fuzzy.
No, not really.
But he pushed innovation. He built this powerhouse of a company. And it was all through, some might say, incredibly high expectations, a demanding style, maybe even fear-inducing for some people, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, well, maybe his employees didn't like universally love him or anything. He definitely had huge respect. And part of that was probably driven by the fear of like messing up, of not meeting those crazy standards he had. And of course, his vision was just so powerful. And you can see a similar kind of thing with Jeff Bezos at Amazon, right?
Right.
Like he's so focused on results. And the work culture there is notoriously intense, you know?
Yeah.
And while that obviously drives success, it wasn't all about, people liking each other.
Right.
There was real pressure to perform, a fear of not meeting those ambitious goals he set.
So for you listening, the takeaway isn't about ruling your house with an iron fist.
Right.
It's more like, don't think that being popular equals power, you know?
Yeah.
Focus on earning respect through being competent and
Yeah.
setting clear boundaries. Because trying to make everyone happy all the time, that can actually make you vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
It's about recognizing that being liked, it's nice. But being respected for what you can do and your willingness to take action when you need to, that can be way more effective in actually getting what you want done.
Okay. All right. So we've waded through that. Fear versus love. Let's go to another one, another kind of controversial idea from the Prince, that the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
I mean, that raises some eyebrows, doesn't it?
It does. Machiavelli was saying that a leader shouldn't be held back too much by typical morality, like the usual right and wrong, if those restrictions actually stop them from achieving big goals, like goals that are about keeping the state stable and safe.
Right.
And his view was that in a world where other people might be acting ruthlessly, if you're too stuck on being, good all the time, it could actually make you weak,
Uh-huh.
and then you fail. And he wrote this pretty famous line: "To maintain power, a ruler must often act against faith, charity, humanity, and religion."
Whoa. That sounds like he's saying you can just do whatever you want with no thought to ethics at all.
It's really important to see his argument in the context of his time. you know? He wasn't saying go be gratuitously violent or cruel.
Right.
It was more about a practical approach.
Right.
Where, like, the survival and well-being of the state, that's the main goal, right? And sometimes that needs actions that might seem wrong if you're just talking about one person's morals.
Yeah. I think we can see that kind of thinking today, too, right?
Yeah.
Look at Elon Musk,
Yeah.
the way he's, like, shaking up all these industries. Tesla, SpaceX, even buying Twitter, which is now X, right? It often seems like his big vision comes first, even if it means stepping on traditional business rules or even what the public thinks.
It's a good parallel. I mean, Musk is relentless about reaching his goals. He challenges the way things have always been done. And he even kind of seems to enjoy stirring up controversy.
Right.
And you can view all that through this lens, right? While people debate his methods, his fans would probably say that in the end, his disruptive actions, they're actually pushing innovation and progress.
Right.
So that justifies the unusual ways he goes about it.
So, again, this isn't about just dropping all your principles.
Right.
But it makes you think. When you got a really important goal, are there times when you have to make tough choices? Choices that maybe not everyone's going to love, or choices that aren't perfectly good to get there.
Yeah.
It's about balancing how important the outcome is with what it takes ethically to get there.
Exactly. It's like you're acknowledging that when you're going after big goals, especially if there are big obstacles in your way, being totally stuck to a strict moral code, it could actually slow you down or even make you fail. Machiavelli's like making us confront what happens when you act and what happens when you don't, and to really think about how much that final goal actually matters.
Okay, let's move on to another piece of advice from the prince.
Yeah.
That's strategically really interesting. He says, never reveal your true intentions.
Right.
That sounds like essential in any kind of competition, right?
Oh, yeah. Machiavelli believed that if you're in the game of power, being totally transparent, it can make you really vulnerable. So if you keep your real goals and how you plan to get there secret, it means your opponents can't predict what you're going to do, so they can't counter you effectively. And he had advised rulers to be good at deception, to show one face to the world, but actually have completely different motives underneath.
It's like playing poker, right?
Exactly.
Keep your cards close.
Yeah.
And I think a great modern example of that is Warren Buffett, right?
Oh, perfect example.
He's famous for quietly getting a ton of stock in companies before anyone even realizes what he's up to.
Right.
So then when his plans finally come out, he's already got a bunch of leverage.
Yeah. Buffett's strategy of quietly building up his position, it's a classic example of this principle in action. By not saying what he's interested in right away, he avoids making the stock price go up too soon so he can buy the shares for less.
Smart.
It's completely deliberate. He gains an advantage by keeping his real intentions hidden until, it's the perfect moment to strike.
So for you listening, it's not about being sneaky and two-faced with everyone, but strategically when you're up against some kind of resistance. Or if talking about your plans too early could mess things up, then keeping quiet is a really good idea.
It's true.
Don't go broadcasting every move you're going to make before you have to.
Yeah. It's about being smart about when you share information, knowing when to keep things private and when to let people in. That can be so important in any competitive environment. Business negotiations, trying to get ahead in your career, even personal stuff.
Right.
If other people have different goals than you.
Okay, here's another one. This one's pretty intense.
Okay.
Crush your enemies completely. I mean, that's uncompromising.
Yeah, no kidding. The reason Machiavelli says that, it comes from his belief that doing things halfway is actually super dangerous.
Right.
Like, if you defeat someone, but you don't completely take them out of the picture, they're probably going to be angry, right? And want to get back at you, and they'll wait for the chance. So he thought it was much better to just get rid of the threat completely.
Wow.
So you're safe in the long run. And he said, people should either be treated well or crushed entirely, because they can avenge slight injuries, but not those that are severe.
And the historical example we have of that is Julius Caesar, right?
Right.
Famous for all his military victories, but some historians think that he was too lenient on some of the enemies he beat. And that maybe that played a part in why he was assassinated.
Yeah, it's a big interpretation. Caesar did show mercy a lot, but there was still so much resentment and fear from certain groups. And in the end, it led to his downfall. Machiavelli would probably say that was because Caesar didn't fully deal with the threats he had around him.
Wow. So for you listening, hopefully you're not facing enemies you got to crush every day.
You're right. Hopefully not.
But think about times when you do have some kind of conflict,
Right.
whether it's at work or a personal problem.
Mm-hmm.
Machiavelli's advice is that if you decide to fight, you should aim to really solve it so it doesn't come back. Because if you only try a little bit, it might just make things worse. And then you're open to more problems later on.
Exactly. It's like those unresolved conflicts, they can grow and become even bigger problems down the line, right?
Yeah.
So when you absolutely have to confront something head on, being decisive can really lower the chance that they'll try to get back at you or that you'll just be stuck in that struggle forever.
Right. All right, last one. This seems kind of contradictory.
Okay.
Appear virtuous, but be ruthless when necessary. How do you even do that?
Yeah, it's a subtle idea, and it's often misunderstood. What Machiavelli was saying is that a ruler should try to look good to the public,
Okay.
appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, honest, all that good stuff.
Right.
But he also thought that if you're always totally bound by those virtues, it could actually hurt you
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to keep power and stability.
Interesting.
So a ruler needs to be ready to act ruthlessly when they have to, even if it goes against how they're seen by everyone else, because it's for the good of the state.
And in the example they give in the sources of politicians.
No, yeah, that's a perfect example.
So often we see them making a big deal about their image, right?
Yeah.
Talking to the people, highlighting their values.
Mm-hmm.
But behind the scenes, they're probably doing all kinds of power moves and stuff that's not so virtuous.
Oh, for sure. Politicians have to make hard choices sometimes, unpopular choices, to actually govern effectively, and keeping a good public image helps them stay legitimate.
Mm.
But their actions behind the scenes, that might involve compromises, alliances, even fights that don't really fit that nice, virtuous picture they present.
So how do you translate that for you, the listener?
Yeah,
I guess it's about understanding that it's good to come across as positive and trustworthy
definitely.
in your work life and your personal life, right?
Yeah.
Because people are more likely to trust and work with someone who seems ethical and caring. But there might be times when you have to be, strategically strong.
Yeah.
Even make tough choices that might seem kind of harsh in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to do it to protect yourself
Yeah.
or to get what you need. It's about balancing how you're perceived and taking effective action.
Exactly. It's about knowing that sometimes to actually get things done, you need to be practical. And that means going beyond just following the same moral rules all the time. It's about being flexible and making the right choices while still keeping a generally good reputation.
So to wrap up this deep dive into The Prince,
Yeah.
the big takeaway seems to be that Machiavelli is giving us a pretty realistic and not very sentimental look at power in the real world. He's saying that you don't usually just get handed power, you got to take it.
Mm.
And then you got to hold on to it.
Right.
And that often means doing things that might be morally questionable.
Right. Exactly. And those principles, even though they're like centuries old, they still apply in so many parts of our lives. Business, relationships, leadership roles. It doesn't matter. Understanding Machiavelli's framework can give you a really useful, although maybe sometimes uncomfortable, way of seeing how power works.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to think about.
Okay.
In your own life and in the world, do you think that getting power and keeping it, does it need some ruthlessness, like Machiavelli says? Or is there a way to be a good leader and get what you want while always being moral and ethical?
That's a big question.
It is. It's something to really think about.
It is. And keep in mind, this was just a focused look at some of the main ideas from The Prince. The whole book is much richer and more detailed. So if you're interested in getting a deeper understanding of Machiavelli's work, which is definitely long-lasting and often controversial, you should check out the whole thing.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.